brief introduction, my name is Nick Gumpert. I'm our club education coordinator, and this is one of my objectives is to work with our player pool, specifically our competitive player pool. So this is for our U11 to U14 players and our competitive teams here at Fire FC to delve into the sports psychology piece, because the reality is there are 4 foundational blocks that create any one player. You've got your technical, right? All your coaches work on your ball skills and your ability to pass and finish and trap a ball and first touch, dribbling, all that good stuff. Then you, of course, have your tactical, right? Your positioning. What position are you going to play? What formations do they want to play? You've got your physical piece, right? Are you in shape? Are you doing things on your own? Are you able to get faster than you were last season? But then you also have that mental piece, right? And it's so easy for us to say, oh, I need to be mentally tougher. Or it's so easy for adults, coaches, parents to say, you need to be have a tougher mentality. Well, how do you develop that mentality? So that's the big purpose and the big driver of these opportunities that I want to create for you players. It's just once every other month. And I'm anticipating in August, this will be back in person at our Fire FC facility. But again, want to delve into this topic. The person is bigger than the player. So let's dive into this. Review and preview. So the review and review of our last session, real quick, in a nutshell, it was building your inner voice. So for those of you that weren't able to attend, or even for those that were, we all have 2 voices. We have that public voice that will say out loud to everybody, to our parents, whether it's talking back a little bit, participating in your school class, integrating with friends, etc. Right? Then you have that private voice. And that's the one that I really delved into in the April sports psych session. Is what are you talking and telling yourself as a player, right? After you make that mistake. So 2 things to be mindful of with that private voice that I went over in April. Be mindful of how it speaks to you. How it, meaning your inner voice that you have, we all have it. And 2, is it a voice that builds you up or breaks you down? Right? And be mindful that you control that inner voice. I don't control it for you. Your parents don't control it for you. Your coach doesn't control it. So just be mindful of that responsibility each and every one of you have as 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old players to drive that inner voice, and make sure you're mindful to make sure it's a voice that helps build you up, not break you down, right? So that's a little bit of a review that we touched on there in April. If you want that PowerPoint slideshow, including the video I shared, just email me. And my contact info, I believe, is on the website, easy enough. Again, not hard to find for me being the club education coordinator. Little preview of what we're looking at this time around. It's that player is bigger than that person is bigger than the player, and getting that order right, because I know I struggled with it as a soccer player, growing up at Fire FC, going on to play college, played a little in Brazil, is how do you detach yourself from something you do? How do you detach yourself maybe from a result that you just got? Maybe take away the sport. Maybe it's a class you just took and you got a B, and you're a straight A student, or you get mostly A's and you're really disappointed. How do you detach yourself from that outcome, right? So that's what we're going to drive into in this sports psych, the sports psych session. So that's a little bit of a preview. Wanted to share this one to start us off. Be yourself is the worst advice, especially when you're young. You're 11, 12 years old. You don't know what yourself is. Right? That's a reality. It's good to have a role model and a template that you can find your own authentic self within. So again, adults make it sound so easy to be like, oh, just be yourself. But if you haven't developed some of those skill sets and you haven't had that time or the same time they have, it's like, well, what does that mean? Right? Here's another thought. The best way to find yourself isn't looking inward to see who you are. It's looking outward to see who you admire. Who's maybe someone in the soccer space, the technology space, what interests do you have, and find people to look up to in those spaces, and then figure out what is it about them that draws them to you, right? Role models help you identify what you value and who you want to become. Trying on different possible selves is a route to authenticity, right? So I'm going to delve into that a little bit more with this next slide. Society is obsessed with or. I mean, obsessed. Think about it. It's you're either a good student or a good athlete. Why can't you be both? I'm a good student and a good athlete. What about for those of you that identify with just one sport, whether it's soccer, maybe you play 2 sports and you're torn. It's like, am I allowed to do that? Right? Society is obsessed to say you have to choose. Why can't you be good at both and enjoy both? Here's a more complex one, friends. Either you have to be friends with him or her or them. Are you one of us or are you one of them? I think that's one that ties up a lot of people, not just when you're 11, 12, 13, 14, but in your high school years, in your college years, and even in your adult years, right? So society is so, again, obsessed with you have to choose one or the other. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to. Turn your ors into ands more often, and you're going to find that you can navigate things a lot more. You can be a lot happier because now you're not excluding so much, right? So just be mindful of that one as you try to find those role models. Do I like them or them? Why can't you like both of them, right? And maybe they're for different reasons. You like this role model because you can relate to them because of the sport you both play, but you like that role model that doesn't play your sport, but you just like them for, again, your own reasons in a different place, in a different space, right? So things to be mindful of as you're navigating your situations within your teams. And it's about you really being a bit selfish to identify, how do you identify yourself, right? Turn your ors into more ands. I can do this and that. So let's delve into this month's topic. The person is bigger than the player, and it's important to get this order right as a player. I'm going to give you an example, and we're going to just paint this story, and this is going to be really the main piece I share with you, boys and girls, today. So meet Blakely. I changed the name for the example here, but she's a good young soccer player that's been playing since she was 8 years old, and she's now in college, right? Here's her resume. She got a D1 scholarship. She was the National Freshman of the Year. So if you're 11 and 12, you're like, what's that mean? She was identified as the top player in the country, right? As her first year in college. And she plays with our under 20 national team. So that's a little bit about Blakely. Here's what her feedback was when my friend, who's a sports psychologist, was interviewing her for this assignment. She said, my biggest struggle is dealing with expectations. I set my standards so high personally that it's not okay to fail, but it should be. I haven't been able to accept that yet. I've had a lot of success through my soccer career, especially this last season. So how do I match or exceed that so I don't let people down? I think that's something that many of you are going to have to navigate, whether it's through soccer, whether it's through school, maybe it's both, maybe it's another sport, maybe it's in school, right? Once you get straight A's, it's like, okay, what's after that? What's next? How do I maintain that, right? So maybe you can relate to this example. So many people, from family, friends, coaches, teammates, and media, all expect something from me. They want success. And when I'm not succeeding, they don't want any part of it. If I don't maintain my play, my characteristics, my purity, if I make a mistake, everyone's watching and judging. So it feels like they're waiting for me to fail so they can say, I told you so, or she's not that golden girl that everyone thought she was, is she? For me, it's everything. I feel watched, pressured, and judged for every little thing I say or do. Again, replace the soccer specific example here and maybe relate it to your own space, right? How does this maybe relate to you in what you do and are very, very good at? Maybe it is soccer. I can't say that I'm not grateful for that because this is what brought me success, right? Soccer brought her success. So it's like, are you really dissatisfied with it? Right? It's something that tears up a lot of people. It's what made me, I guess, popular in the soccer world. But with that comes so much pressure, right? I'm scared to fail. I can't fail. I can't fail for my family. I can't fail for my coaches, past or present. I can't fail for my teammates. I can't fail for all the people who told me that I couldn't do it. I can't fail for myself. Maybe some of you can relate to this, or maybe not yet, but remember this example as you get older. So as you can see, she's dealing with a lot of pressure. So the following day, I asked her 3 questions. Do you feel like your identity is tied to the result of your performance on the field? She said, absolutely. Do you see how results are outside of your control? She said, yeah. Do you see how you're allowing something that's outside of your control to affect the way you feel about yourself as a person? She said, yes. So think about that. Do you feel like your identity is tied to the result of your performance on the field? She had a bad game. She's like, I'm not as good of a friend. I'm not as good as a person. I'm not as good of a daughter, right? Do you see how results outside of her control? She can't control whether her team wins or loses all the time. She can influence it, but she can't control it, right? Neither can you. You can influence it, but you can't control that outcome. Sometimes it's a windy game. Sometimes it's a super hot game. Sometimes it's a wet, muddy, slippery game. That's outside of your control, right? Things to be mindful of. And do you see how she allows something that's outside of her control affect the way she feels about herself as a person? Maybe you can relate to that. So I asked her 3 more questions to try to expand her perspective. I said, who was a leading goal scorer in the NCAA 3 years ago? NCAA is the college level. She said, I don't know. I said, that's interesting. Who was your favorite teacher growing up? She said, my 8th grade science teacher. I said, why? She said, she was really personable and she got to know us. So it's amazing the impact good teachers can have. But what do the prior questions show? People forget stats. What do people remember? They remember who saw them and got to know them as a person. Can you relate to that? So it goes back to this main topic that I want to drive home. The person is more important than the player. And ultimately, the person drives the player. Blakely put note cards like this everywhere to remind herself of what she wanted younger girls to see when she played. She wrote note cards that said player or person is bigger than the player. I want to be the person she is. And then she wrote out a statement, not just the soccer player. Think about that. So if soccer is your thing, right? Maybe this is a good example of what you can do that's not just reserved for her because of her resume. Can it be something you start for reminders for yourself based on where you're at? And I think something like that, again, you can do this as an 11-year-old. You can do this as a 12, 13, 14-year-old who aspires to play at a high level, right? What are reminders you can give yourself every morning? Because here's where she took that. She put it on her phone. She put it on her mirror that she sees every morning in the bathroom. She put it on her water bottle. Why did she do that? She needs a constant reminder because this is exactly the opposite of how she's been conditioned. Again, society is obsessed with or. You have to be this or this. Or once you become successful at a sport, at school, at whatever it is that you're super interested in, expectations start getting higher, right? But don't let those outcomes always determine, right, who you are as a person. So what do you stand for? What are things that are important to you within your control that you can do every single day? Is it your attitude? Is it your work rate? Is it your ability to continue to learn, continue to adapt, continue to do new things and try new things? Those are all within your control, right? So this is your action. This is my challenge to you as players. Can you find something similar to this to make it your own? What are your own reminders and where can you put your reminders? And here's why this matters. In soccer, missing a penalty kick. If her identity is tied to how she performs as a player, then how is she feeling in that moment that she missed a PK, right? Terrible. So is she in a good state of mind to move forward to the next play if she misses that penalty? Obvious answer is no. But what if we switch the grading system? What if we graded her as a person when she missed that penalty kick? What if we graded her on how she handled the missed penalty in that moment? If we can shift her identity back to herself as a person, we can then repurpose that moment and make it something bigger. That missed penalty now becomes an opportunity to show younger players and her teammates how to handle failure, right? Think about failures you might have had. Again, let's use school as an example. You didn't get the grade you wanted.